My name is Johanna Wagstaffe. I'm a meteorologist and an earth scientist. Every day, I see the effects of climate change through my work, a relentless cycle of extreme weather, terrifying storms, deadly heat domes, wildfires, droughts. But I remain in awe of the natural world and how it finds ways to adapt. And that's what we explore on Planet Wonder. We're in a global food crisis. It's getting harder to feed a growing population with food that is increasingly impacted by extreme weather. And we know the production of food, particularly meat, is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. My diet these days, super questionable. That got me wondering, how vegan do we have to be to save the planet? Okay, pepperoni sticks and ice cream aside, can I just say, food, glorious food. It's a source of fuel, it's a source of pleasure, and sometimes a source of anxiety. Our relationship with food is complex. Factor in climate change, and we may need to rethink that relationship. From farm to fork, from processing plant to supermarket aisle, food production is a major contributor to global greenhouse gas emissions. There's a wide range of estimates of how much of an emitter the food industry is. Some studies say 1/4 of greenhouse gas emissions are from food. Others say it's more than 1/3. Why the range? Well, the food cycle in its entirety involves so much. It's hard to know what to include in that calculation. Some studies don't include emissions from cooking, for example. Others disagree about adding in land use change and deforestation. But no matter how you look at it, this is a biggie. And here's a fact that every major study does agree with. The food which creates the greatest emissions are meat and dairy. But can one person choosing to go vegan or cutting back on meat and dairy really make a global difference? To learn more about the impact individual diet decisions can have on the planet, we met up with Tammara Soma. She's an expert on food system planning at Simon Fraser University. We got together on campus, right next to her own garden plot, and we came prepared for a picnic, a little gardening, and maybe a few worms. Okay, Tammara, how is our diet cooking the planet?
We actually need to think about the whole supply chain, the whole food system. So from the point of food production, all the way to transporting it, distribution, to how we're selling it, what kind of packaging, and then consuming it, how are we cooking it? Are we wasting it? All the way to the point of waste management. At every step of that food supply chain, we can either make good choices, sustainable choices, or we can really cook the planet.
That's interesting. So as an individual, how does one think about such a large process that we're not, necessarily involved in every step?
I mean, that's the hard thing about the food system and thinking about the food supply chain in general from the point of production all the way to consumption. And this is why, in this garden, we actually get a glimpse of, growing food, and then we're going to eat food later. This is how we can start to get an understanding of how it all connects together.
So for a lot of people, it's actually doing research.
Doing research, but also getting your hands dirty. The thing is, a lot of people don't get a chance to get their hands dirty and understand, the whole system.
That is true, myself included. I may look the part, but I don't have a green thumb. I may still be learning to get to know plants, but I do know cows. Why is beef so bad for global warming? The short answer, cows emit methane. Methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2. It sticks around in the atmosphere for much less time, about 12 years, versus the centuries that CO2 will stick around. But it heats the atmosphere much more quickly. And the largest source of anthropogenic methane is agriculture. And cows generate methane through two different ways, and they are exactly the ways that you're thinking. It's through digestion and waste, i.e. belching and farting. Cows are part of an animal group called ruminants. Hey, ruminant, Just like goats and sheep and giraffes, they all have 4 stomachs to help digest their food. Each stomach chamber has a different job, but the first one, the rumen, is where the methane is produced. Your rumen stomach is where microorganisms break down complex carbohydrates into sugars, and the byproduct is methane. Contrary to popular belief, it's actually cow belching that produces the most methane rather than farting. Don't really like that word. I like to say rumble. It's not your rumbles that produce most methane. A little bit comes out through the back end, but most of it is actually through cow burps, right? It's called enteric fermentation. Scientists are studying alternatives to cow feed. For example, adding seaweed into your food to produce less methane. How does that sound? How vegan do we have to be to save the planet?
Ooh, that's a great question. In terms of like saving the planet, you know, we know that greenhouse gas emission is creating a lot of challenges, especially for agriculture. I think that in the Western context, there is excessive meat consumption. But at the same time, you know, culturally appropriate food is important. Place-based food is important. So if you're vegan, you know, and it works for you, then that's great. But then for others, that might not be the best solution for them. It might not be culturally appropriate, and it also might not be place-based. Like, people live in different geographies. And so I think that, you know, when I think about, like, you know, meat consumption, definitely there's a need to reduce for some people. And we also need to actually eat our veggies, fruits and veggies, because I do a lot of food waste work. A lot of people throw out fruits and veggies, and it's not going into our tummy, and that's also bad for greenhouse gas emission.
For chefs, food is equal parts art, science, and now sustainability. I enlisted the help of my friend, CBC Vancouver's News to Me host, Leanne Young, for this one.
Hi guys, how are we doing?
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Oh, my first bite's amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
So Patrick, I have to ask you about the ish sauce. So this is a take on the nok mam, right?
Yeah.
Which is the mother sauce in
Okay.
Vietnamese cooking, which is traditionally made.
You need to 101 me on that.
Right, so it's traditionally made with a fish sauce, right? So
Exactly.
how did you guys do it so that it tastes just like the original thing?
We kind of workshopped the idea. We had like different variations. Nothing tasted right, and like our philosophy was always that like if we couldn't do like a a good version that you don't miss like the meat on, we weren't gonna do it, right?
If you don't do this sauce, you like half of Vietnamese cooking ain't.
Pretty much. Like once we got that sauce, it unlocked pretty much the entire like Vietnamese menu to us, right?
Can you reveal the secret?
It's proprietary. Like
Yeah, fair enough.
But I mean, I would say that we blended a couple of different techniques. There is a little bit of aging going on there.
Fermentation always helps.
So there's fermentation going on, which is obviously like the building block of a traditional nuc cham.
But why was it so important to you to stick to a plant-based menu?
You know, there's a story that so originally we cooked, like we had a house special, which is a restaurant that served meat and everything. And remember, there was one day on my birthday, we had an event the next day, and so they wanted this like fried chicken quail dish. And so we brought in like this whole box of quails, and I remember like deboning the quail, and I cut my finger on it at like midnight on my birthday. And I just thought to myself, like, look, I just don't want to do this anymore, right? Like, you know, if I do the next thing that I do, I want it to be something I don't feel bad about.
Is sustainability part of that reason?
Absolutely. I mean, like working in a traditional restaurant, you kind of see how much waste goes into it and how much waste product comes out of those restaurants. And so doing something like this where you can reuse all the parts and like, you know, everything goes into a soup stock, everything goes into something else, and like you don't really feel like you're wasting anything. Like it just makes cooking that much more satisfying, I think, so.
And maybe that much more delicious.
I hope so.
We will try and see. I know it's delicious. I think you're going to love it, Joe.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.
Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we eat?
Bon appetit.
Oh my goodness. Okay, spring roll you got to do. And you got to dip in the ish sauce.
Okay.
There you go.
Going right in with the hands.
That's right.
This is live footage of an actual lunch that I would pack for myself.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no judging, but I've got peanut butter and jelly, slightly old carrots, and I think this is a good chance to talk about food waste and what we should be doing with it.
Absolutely. Food waste is such a major issue, especially in Canada, where 58% of the food that is produced for human consumption actually gets wasted along the food supply chain. And it's like the cost is approximately $49 billion a year, just in Canada alone. So that's big, that's huge. And when we think of that number, the $49 billion, that's not the true cost. So it actually does not include, you know, the water that's wasted, the energy, the labor, the transportation. So it's actually larger than $49 billion. And this is why I actually brought egg salad.
Okay, hold that thought. There are groups trying to reduce this waste in a big way.
Hi, I'm Anna from Food Stash, and this fridge is full of food that was supposed to end up in a landfill, but instead is gonna go help to feed our community. Did you know in Canada we're wasting 58% of the food that we're producing? But 1 in 5 Canadians are reportedly food insecure. Not only are Canadians going hungry, but we're also wasting valuable resources that we use to grow beautiful food that looks like this. By rescuing this food, we're not only feeding people, but we're also protecting our environment from a harmful greenhouse gas known as methane, which happens when food waste gets trapped in landfills. It can be pretty shocking to find out how much food is wasted here in Canada, but we have some simple tips for you to get involved in your local food systems and fighting food waste at home. First up is making sure you try to buy local whenever possible. Second is making sure you eat all the food in your fridge regardless of a few bruises or wrinkles. And lastly is making sure that if you do have food waste, to throw it in the compost and not the garbage.
Yes, please tell me about your lunch, which looks much better than my lunch.
No, I think your lunch looks delicious. I love peanut butter and jelly. So basically I had boiled eggs for breakfast.
Nice.
And because I made a few extra one, I thought to myself, well, you know, like cold boiled egg in the fridge, probably not, but put a little bit of mayo, salt and pepper. And then we cut some, you know, like the chive.
Oh yeah, so you're just gonna sort of sprinkle them in there?
Well, we're gonna cut it.
I was proud that my carrots were slightly old and I'm still gonna eat them. Is that the biggest problem, fruits and vegetables?
Fruits and vegetables, they're one of the most wasted product when it comes to like food. When we do food waste audits, we find that people waste a lot of fruits and vegetables because they are perishable.
Hold up. Okay, remember when Doc Brown used food scraps to power his DeLorean in Back to the Future?
I need fuel.
Turns out it's not science fiction. Researchers at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, are using fruit waste to power fuel cells. And fruit waste is in abundance in the agricultural belt of the Okanagan Valley. In fact, it represents 40% of material in provincial landfills, and it's a growing problem in urban areas as well, around the world. Enter microbial fuel cells. They convert fruit waste into electrical energy. The key is to keep the bacteria in a sealed-off chamber with no oxygen. Here, the bacteria consume the organic matter and release electrons and protons in the process. With no oxygen in that chamber, they flow through a circuit to a separate chamber where they join with protons and oxygen, at the same time completing a current and generating bioelectricity in the process. The team says different fruits have different outputs, so they're now testing the bioconversion efficiency, hoping to eventually produce the best voltage output. We're still a ways away from tossing a banana peel into the back of your car to make it go, but we have yet to understand the full potential of microbial fuel cells. And turning waste into green energy, it's a win-win. You know, just out of curiosity, do you know when you buy things, you know, are you looking to see where everything is coming from and just doing a mental check on how far things are traveling?
Yeah, you know, it's really hard. I would say that, you know, the time scarcity, actually like busyness, is a contributor to food waste because, you know, when people are so busy, you know, they have time scarcity, it's hard to be mindful and think about like everything. It's hard to plan and prepare. And so I try my best. I do shop, you know, with a farmer that is actually nearby, but for like some veggies. But with other things like, you know, the cookies, I'm not sure. It's my daughter's Girl Guide cookies, but I don't know where all of the ingredients come from.
You're never gonna believe this. Just say you're supporting Girl Guides. Don't feel too guilty. I know.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, well, I'm gonna dig in.
Okay.
How important is technology when it comes to lowering the greenhouse gas emissions or the carbon footprint of food production?
Well, you know, we're actually sitting on a mallet,
Yes.
which is a tool, and technology is a tool. So there's a lot of great technologies that can really help, you know, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, even like, you know, from reducing the amount of pesticides and fertilizers. You know, those are all, you know, especially if it's fossil fuel based, that can also reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
One option for all of us, even those with limited space, the vertical garden. So we're standing in front of an indoor garden at the Simon Fraser University campus in Surrey. Pablo, show me your laboratory.
This is an indoor garden, a vertical garden. So one of the experiences that we had in here was water, dealing with watering. A garden without water is not a garden. And because of the conditions that we are here, getting water is cumbersome. So what we have done is modify these planters with self-watering. So we have a space where water stands. And that is the reason why we have these little sticks, which are our measuring sticks, to see how much water we put in here. So currently we are watering once a week, around a gallon of water a week.
So the big question is, who gets to eat all of this?
Oh, that's a good question. So what we do is we invite the students to come and be part of the cohort, a gardening cohort that we run in spring, summer and fall. And they come and they develop their gardening skills, learn how to grow and when to grow, and they benefit from harvesting. So it's kind of hands-on. You harvest, you eat, you plant, you take care, and you close the cycle.
There's technologies that can help shorten the food supply chain, help us communicate better and market better. That also reduces the distance. That can help greenhouse gas emission. But I think what's important to remember is that technology is not the be-all and end-all. We have to think about the entire system. Like when we think about tools and technologies, we need to think about externalities. So, okay, we have this one tool that can help with this, but how is it produced? Is it using metal and mining that's coming from different countries, and what's the impact on that? We also need to think about costs, right? Is it accessible? And who really benefits from this technology? So I think when we think of technologies, we need to think about all of the different nuances, be open-minded, but also not just accept it as, you know, that this is going to solve everything, because we are humans, and behind the technology, there are humans controlling that technology. So we need to think about, you know, all of the three elements of human, environment, and economics.
Open-minded? How about this? Meat grown in a laboratory. You've probably all heard of this science fiction sounding solution to the world's growing demand for meat. But could technology really be an answer? Because let's face it, renouncing meat from our diet is not easy or realistic for many people. That's why numerous companies around the world are racing to develop technology to meet that demand, testing sustainable methods to satisfy the savory taste of a good steak without exhausting livestock. Sure, you have your plant-based substitutes like Beyond Meat, but how about meat that materializes in a petri dish? Scientists have found a way to grow meat in a lab using stem cells. Lab-grown meat, or cultured meat, is made from tissue harvested from animals. They're put in bioreactors and cultured with amino acids and carbohydrates, causing them to multiply, and eventually you have something resembling meat, though your mileage may vary on the look or taste of it. Cultured doesn't eat up resources like water and land, but a recent study says that creating meat from a lab may actually use more energy to make sure that the nutrients are clean. Many cultured meat startups are still in the process of getting their products cleared for human consumption, but stay tuned for the day there's a lab meat aisle at the grocery store, and until then, adding more fruits and veggies into your diet is the only surefire solution. And you could try insects. Beef, pork, chicken, dairy. We know the earth takes huge hits to produce all the animal products we eat. But might I bug you about a different animal product that emits considerably less greenhouse gases? Hear me out. creepy crawlies. 6 legs, preferably, not 8. This is a relatively new concept for many of us, but insects have been part of cultural diets in regions like Vietnam, Thailand, for millennia. Could edible insects like crickets and mealworms hit our grocery shelves and become more of a fixture in our diets? Well, experts say there's a number of advantages to eating bugs, both for our nutrition and the environment. Depending on what insect you're eating, they can be rich in protein and good fats, protein with high vitamin, fiber, and mineral content. Farming insects requires less to produce than livestock, not to mention how they need less water and land. And because insects are ectothermic, aka cold-blooded, they are efficient in converting feed into protein and can even be fed organic waste. A few cricket farms have popped up in Canada over the last 10 years, and some farmers markets even carry a few cricket snacks or two. Just recently, a massive cricket processing facility came online in London, Ontario, with the hopes to produce 13 million kilograms of cricket protein annually, mainly for pet food markets for now. So what's stopping us from eating more bugs? Well, sure, there's the psychological barrier for some, but more research does need to be done when it comes to the potential biological hazards of eating different kinds of bugs. I'm talking microbugs in the bugs. But either way, it's getting quite a bit of buzz.
Instead of actually putting food waste in the landfill, which is not good,
Right.
We should put it in the compost, right? So you don't want to waste food to begin with, but these are food scraps,
Yes.
and it's really good to compost it. So let's just move this thing here.
Ooh, there's some good critters in
Can
here.
you feel that it's warm?
It's warm, and there's some roly-polies and worms.
And the red wiggler worms. And so this is like, it's like vermicomposting basically. The worms will help break down all of the, the food scraps, the nutrients, and then that's gonna go back into the garden.
Amazing. Okay, let's go down the rabbit hole.
So the reason I started cover cropping at Tammara was to really bring the soil back and make it really healthy again. In the history of the property, it'd been tilled, and then they stopped tilling, which was a great first step, and continued mowing a lot, and that burned a lot of diesel and really created a lawn-esque environment, very dusty environment in summer. And so by starting to work with cover crops, we intentionally reduced the number of times we mow to 2 per season from pretty much every month. So we burn less diesel, we travel less over the vineyard, and we allow for more habitat for all sorts of critters, more diversity of plants, and really more diversity underground too, as those cover crops feed the microbes underground.
Cover crops is what you use as a tool to feed the soil microbes when they're there, and keep them alive and thriving.
Over the course of seasons, cover cropping for us has allowed us to reduce our irrigation needs, increase nutrient cycling, allowed us to decrease off-site compost additions, creating forage for our livestock, and cooling our vineyards.
We've learned so much over the last few years, the people who've been doing it, and more people are taking it up. We're a small little group, but we keep growing.
This is your research, closing the loop, but how do we create, a sustainable food system?
I'm passionate about teaching the future generations, my students, but also working with people in school, folks in school, to instill food literacy. So food literacy is basically like the education and the knowledge of understanding the whole food supply chain, food cycle from food production all the way to the consumption and to the waste management. Food education, it has not been valued very much, and so I think that we need to think about food education as a way to help us better understand climate, to help us better understand math and science, to help us better understand culture. And in the context of Canada especially, I'm passionate about land-based learning, and I invite Indigenous elders and experts into my classroom, learning about food, being in touch with the land, and recognizing the indigenous traditional ecological knowledge is one way to actually support decolonization and reconciliation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
And it doesn't smell also, in case
and it's
anyone's
warm.
wondering. Yeah.
I love this.
So we don't all have to adopt a 100% vegan diet to make a difference. It's about choosing to eat more fruits and vegetables, throwing away less food, and being more conscientious when we do choose to eat meat. To quote co-founder of One Green Planet, the real war against climate change is being fought on our plates.
I'm watering peas.
Oh, nice. Is this our vegetable garden?
Some carrots.
Oh yeah, some carrots too. I forgot about those. Nice job. Do you think everyone should try and grow their own food?
Yes.